Dr. Christy Ennis. If you've ever had sciatica, you know how miserable and painful that can be. And you know that there are certain things that you want to do to make it feel better. But what you don't do can be just as important. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And then some alternatives for those things you aren't supposed to do and how to make it better. Number one is stretching the hamstrings. Now, oftentimes when it feels tight in back of here, right, that's the first thing we want to do is go into that stretch and really get that pull. But here's why it's not good. Nerves do not like to be stretched. So even though it feels tight, if you have sciatica, it is coming from that sciatic nerve. And stretching the nerve actually aggravates it in the long run. So it really actually makes things worse. So a better alternative is to do something called a nerve glide, which I'm going to show you next. Two ways to do this glide. I'm going to show you the first one seated. The other one is going to be on the ground. But you're going to get to a chair. And let's say it's your left side that's got that irritation. You're going to start by just kicking that leg straight out. If you go, oh, that's a little bit uncomfortable, but not terrible, that's actually where you're going to start. Notice I am not holding this. You're just going to go out and come back in. Like I said, we're trying to get that nerve to kind of glide in its groove the way it's supposed to be, but we're not stretching it. That's why you're only doing repetitions. Now, if you don't feel anything doing that, you can add in the trunk along with it so that you're kind of flexing forward as that leg comes out, and then you can even sit all the way up and look up. So this nerve really has tension throughout this whole system. However, if you feel like, whoa, that is so zingy, you're gonna stick with just that leg part, maybe even adding just a little head part to it. About 10 to 15. Start off with once a day, make sure that it feels okay. And then you can work up to about 3 times a day. And remember, it's supposed to feel maybe a little uncomfortable, but by the time you're done, it should feel not so bad. So keep that in mind, and let me show you the second one. This next one is sometimes a little bit more gentle, so if that first one was really aggravating, this is a good place to start. I am on the ground, but please, please, please don't feel that you need to. You can totally just do this right in bed. So again, if it is my left side, I'm going to take my hands behind my thigh, and then from here, I'm just going to straighten out this lower leg until I feel, again, maybe that little bit of that pulling sensation, and then I'm going to come right down. So same thing with the chair as like with the chair, right? We're just going back and forth here. And if you're like, oh, that doesn't feel too bad, or it doesn't feel bad at all, if you can get that all the way straight, then you can go ahead and add those toes towards you. But again, that's not until this feels good and you can go all the way straight. So it would be, the progression would be, get that leg relatively straight, bring those toes towards you. And again, though, let it all go, right? That's kind of the key component for this. Make sure you're not holding these. Same progression to once a day, work up to 3 times a day, just on that one side. This next one is bending in the wrong direction. So what the heck does that mean? You actually want to go with whichever direction feels comfortable. So if you have a disc issue, oftentimes leaning backwards feels better than leaning forwards. And oftentimes you'll get into this position and just go, ugh. But if you have stenosis, again, not always, but oftentimes it's the opposite, where flexing forward feels a little bit better than extending backwards. So it is really important to find the direction of comfort, whatever that may mean. Sometimes you have no direction of comfort, and then you can just avoid the bending. But if bending backwards feels better for you, that's kind of where you want to go, right? So if you've been sitting especially, you put your hands on your hips and add a few repetitions of back bending. Just, again, avoid the point of pain. That can really help out. And then on the opposite side, if you know that that bending forward is irritating, that can mean lots of things. Not even just bending from the trunk, but anytime you bring your knee to your chest, that's actually flexing the spine. Bending over and brushing your teeth, putting your shoes on, doing dishes. Yes, I know those are things that you have to do, but really take your time to modify while this is really irritated. And then I'm going to show you another way to do a little bit of back bending as well. This next one is obviously lying on your stomach. I am on the ground again, but please, please, please know you can do this right in bed. So sometimes even just kind of hanging out here feels good. If you're able to, you can put those hands kind of like a yoga move, and you're just doing a little bit of a press up. Again, trying to keep your pelvis down, making sure it's not causing pain. If you're like, well, that's not bad, But you tell yourself, you tell whoever you're with that it feels much better when your legs out like this. That's okay too. So then you can even add some press ups in that position. Again, only if that is comfortable. Technically, the guideline is basically every hour to do this, but I don't know about you. It's really hard to get on the ground or even on a bed during the day. So I tell people just do it whenever you get the chance to do it, at least morning and evening. If bending forward tends to be your position of comfort, one of the best ones I found that helps me is when I'm sitting is to bring my legs nice and wide and then just let myself kind of drop and hang down, grab onto those elbows. Again, only go down as far as you can to your point of comfort, and only again if this is actually comfortable for you. But you can just hang out there for a little bit of time, 30 seconds or so, and do that a few times a day. A couple other stretches you can do if flexion feels good. Again, you can do these in bed, don't have to get on the ground. First one is just a single knee to the chest. So you're just kind of holding here. I usually say breathe for about 3 to 5 breaths. And you could do that on both sides. If one side is uncomfortable, obviously don't do that. If one side's actually uncomfortable, I would even hold off on doing the flexion stuff for right now. But if both of those feel good and you want to add a little bit more to it, you can even go ahead and bring both knees in, even adding just a slight rock side to side, a little massage to the spine can feel really good. Next one is prolonged sitting, which in this day and age is sometimes really hard to avoid. But you want to do your best to get out of that sitting or really just a static position. Sitting is a little worse than standing, but just standing in one position all day, not great either. So how do you avoid that? I tell people just add in a little bit of gentle movement that actually feels good on your body. Sometimes it's those kicks out, a little march sometimes feels okay. Even sometimes just adding some arm movement can get some blood flow going. This often is where I'll actually pull out my Derma Edge and start to just get a little bit of blood flow going through some of my muscles. I'll link that for you guys as well. And then, like I said before, if flexion feels good, you certainly can do a little bit of that forward bending only if flexion feels good. And then you can adjust your chair even a little bit. Sometimes, believe it or not, right, leaning back, like people will often find a recliner can feel good. So if it feels good for you to lean back on your chair, at least for a little bit, go ahead and do that. You do want to try to switch positions, again, just so that you're not putting all of that pressure from gravity right down on the spine. Lumbar supports and pillows can also help to keep the spine in a happy position. These next two are tentative, so they're kind of a yellow caution, not necessarily a red light, depending on what is going on. Now, if you are someone that, again, it feels better to extend than flex, this next exercise, the Purform Stretch, is a bad idea. So you guys have probably all seen this one, right? And if you have sciatica, it often goes into the butt. But if it's coming from that nerve, and it does, like I said, feel better to extend, this is going to make things worse. And again, just like the hamstring stretch, if it's coming from the spine and from the nerve, a holding stretch can make it a lot worse. Now, if it is piriformis syndrome, where it's the muscle that's a problem, and it's not coming from the spine, this can feel a little bit better. So that's why I said this is kind of a yellow light one, not a red light one, depending on what the cause is. I'll link a video for you too, so you can see whether you have sciatica or whether you have piriformis syndrome. And then there's one more that's going to involve that piriformis lying on the ground or the bed too. Last one is massage with a tennis ball. Again, sometimes this can be a good thing. If you really just have a tight muscle, that nerve isn't going through it and getting compressed, it might feel pretty darn good. However, if that nerve, which in the piriformis can run on top, in between, or underneath, so if it happens to be in a position where it's going to get smushed, then being on that tennis ball, if you've already got a nerve that's irritated, and just slamming right into it might feel good, again, kind of like the stretching right in the beginning, but it is not going to do you any favors. And you will know, this one is why it's kind of an easy experiment. If you get on that thing and it's like, oh, I'm just gonna work through that pain, I'm just gonna do it. Not a good idea. That's a guideline right there, not to do this one. So light, gentle, like with the Derma Edge, or having somebody do some myofascial release, great way to do. Very rare do you cause compression through the nerve doing that, but the deep tissue stuff you really need to watch out for. So there you have it, 3 things to definitely stay away from and 2 things to be cautious of.